And over here is Tom O'Neill. He's the chairman of the City of Poughkeepsie Planning Board. This is our actually first joint city-town planning board workshop. It's not a voting session. No decisions will be made here. It's just informational for the boards. And before we begin, I'd like to call the meeting to order and do the salute to the flag. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. So I think most everybody's here. A few people wander in. That's great. As I said, this is a workshop. It is a non-voting meeting. No decisions will be made. It's for the benefit of the review, the joint review between the city and town for the O'Neill Dutton project. And hope to have a lively discussion amongst the members and anyone in the audience who, obviously, if you want to, whatever information you get from that, that's great. And there will be subsequent meetings as the project develops down the road. I'd also like to note we have some refreshments over here this evening. Neil and I are providing those to the city and the town, so please feel free to have whatever you like. And that I'd like to introduce Richard Cantor. And
good afternoon, Mr. Wiseman, Mr. O'Neill, and all other members and all other attendees. First, O'Neill Dutton thanks you for taking the time and providing the courtesy of getting together in this joint workshop. The gentleman to my immediate left is Mike McCormick, who's the project engineer. Andrew Featherstone is the project engineer. Lou Kaufman is the chief cook and bottle washer for the project. Lou's here. And Finbar O'Neill, who's a principal, I'm told, is on his way. The principal purpose from our point of view of getting together is for the city planning board members to know the concerns and questions of the town planning board members, and vice versa for the town planning board members to understand and know the questions and concerns of the city planning board members, because this is a project that's located in both municipalities. Very, very briefly, the city zoning is in place and the review before the planning board is ongoing. It may be, as that plan winds down, that there may be one or more area variances within the city that will need to be requested. In the town, the overlay district has been created. The town board is in the process of considering whether to place that overlay district on the O'Neill Dutton property. And as part of that procedure, the planning board is in the process of weighing in on its recommendation to the town board as to whether the overlay district is appropriately to be placed on the O'Neill Dutton property. Quite some time ago, a final environmental impact statement was approved by the city council as the lead agency, and the finding statement was adopted by the Common Council as the lead agency. As we understand, all of the involved agencies, including the town board, including both planning boards, and all other involved agencies who are going to be called upon to make discretionary determinations, will be required to adopt their own finding statements, which will presumably reflect both their views and the changes in the project that have taken place since the original finding statement as part of the review process. That having been said, there was a meeting shortly ago with a few members of each board and consultants, in which we discussed, subject to the approval of both boards, that the city and town applications would be separated. That is, the application in the city would be wholly dependent on city approvals. It would not require any overlap into the town. And the other half of that would be that the town approvals would be town issues and wouldn't overlap into the city. And that discussion had one exception to it, and that is the walkway or park along the riverfront. The City Planning Board has asked for assurance that a park appropriately designed and appropriately built will in fact be in place as part of the development. And the discussion at that recent meeting, subject to the thoughts of the people here and eventually subject to the thoughts of the town board and the common council, is that the walkway or park from the southern end of the project in the town to the northern end of the, in the city, to the northern end of the project in the town would be a city park rather than a town park, open to the public just the same, with the land presumably delivered either from the state of New York to the city or the state of New York to the developer and then to the city, that detail to be worked out, with the design to be approved by the city, subject to some consent and agreement by the town, and with the city being responsible for a city park as it is with any other city park. And as a follow-up to that meeting, the city and town attorneys who were present indicated that they would go to the respective legislative bodies to seek some conceptual agreement with the concept that it would be a city park. There were a couple of other details, one of which is there's something called Kidney Creek, which comes through the property, and the proposal was to relocate and repipe the park solely in the city so that the two applications stand on their own, because right now the creek is somewhere on or through the border of the two municipalities. There was also a question of design, and Mike can give to you a brief overview of design. Some of the members of the City Planning Board appear to be satisfied with the changes that have taken place in the design, and some of the members of the board like it but want more changes. With that said, I'm going to turn it to Mike, and Mike can give you an overview of the design in the city, which is, I guess, further along, and the design in the town, and show you whatever he's brought here to show you.
Thank you. Good evening. Andrew Featherston is from Mazer, and he has a site plan, and it's probably good for everyone to have an understanding of how the site plan lays out, so that it gives a really
I'm wondering if we
overview.
can't maybe take the easel and move it to the space. All of this is being televised. If we can move it so that that camera can pick it up,
Yeah.
that would help.
That way, people will know where building A, B, C, whatever are on the site plan proper. All right, Carol. It's easier for them to understand. Carol's all right.
That's much better. Can,
Once you do the stuff.
We also have another floating microphone over here as well, if you want it.
Maybe that one?
Is that one on?
It sometimes take 5 or 6 seconds to warm up.
Okay.
warm up?
Wow.
Haven't heard that in a while.
Could we get the city to come here to get all this technology?
We're having a green screen installed next.
Green screen.
Weather forecast and all.
Just don't wear green pants.
Oh, that works. Technology, wonderful.
There we go.
Okay. So to orient everyone and have an understanding of what the project really entails, the site plan is probably the best place to start. In terms of the site plan proper, everyone knows where Dutton site is on the riverfront. It encompasses both the town of Poughkeepsie and the city of Poughkeepsie proper. About 2/3 to 3/4 of the site itself is in the city of Poughkeepsie. About 1/4 to 1/3 is in the town. The river is here. This is North Water Street. So the site sits between the river and North Water Street. It borders on the south side Dutchess Avenue, and on the north side the Hudson River Rowing Association property itself. The city property, there's a line that bisects the property in this area that is really where Kidney Creek, we call it Kidney Creek. It's an old riverbed
That's
or
good.
a creek
Eric,
bed.
that was good, the first way. The other way.
So for the most part, from the Kidney Creek town-city line to the south, you can see there's a slew of buildings that are, we'll say, are building A, B, C, D, E, F, and then there are two we call stacked townhouse buildings that are along the riverfront itself. In the town portion, we have stacked townhouses along the river. And you can see that what we've done is we've taken these stacked townhouse-style buildings, and they go parallel with the river proper. From there, we have perpendicular buildings behind them that create auto courts between the buildings. So when you're on the river, or if you're on the circulation spines of the site, especially in the town portion, you don't see the garage doors. You see the front porches. And when we go through the architecture, you'll see the front facades of the buildings, and you can see that they have porches and windows that look out to the river and to the views, but they don't have the garage doors that you've seen in a lot of different projects that we don't like. The city side, again, we have two stacked townhouse-style projects, buildings here, and you have buildings E, F, that are behind the two stacked units. You have there are 4-story buildings, all, but the C and the B buildings are perpendicular to the building, and there's a building in the back called D that has some structured parking, and that's parallel to the river. And then the building A is from Dutchess Avenue. The main drive onto the site will be down Dutchess and coming onto the around the A building. So in that, sorry without an E. There you go. Thanks, Andrew. So as you come down Dutchess, you would enter the site here at the end of Dutchess, and then you would come along the riverfront itself. The idea is that it gives a nice view for everyone who comes in, and even if you have a unit in the back, you still have the ability to see the river at some point during your day. We've also created vistas through the buildings. You don't have one large building or 2 or 3 large buildings. You have the ability to look through the vistas down these alleyways towards the river itself. So for the most part, I think we figured about 70%, Andrew, had views of the river. Sound good? Okay. In some way, shape, or fashion. The park itself will be built along the banks of the Hudson River, and it'll have an esplanade going the full length of the park itself. There'll be drop-off points, and there'll be access certainly from the project down onto the park and to the river. The idea is that this project will be phased, and I believe it's 6 phases. And I think you don't have those with you, Andrew, do you? Okay. If the board would like to see how it will be phased, but essentially this is a brownfield site. It's been cleaned up, and you can see that the owner has put a tremendous effort into that cleanup. Before and after is amazing, even in its current state today. And at the end of that cleanup, there will be a capping of the whole site, and it will have basically grass. You'll have vegetation on the whole site. So, and then initially, the A building will start off the project, and right now, the portion in the town is on the 6th phase. The park itself will be built about, I think, the 84th, Lou, 84th unit?
Yes.
About the 84th unit. Once the 84th unit is built and needs CO, the park has to come on to the site and be built in its totality. let's see, we'll go through the architecture now that we're oriented. This is the, and do you want me to hand these around, or how do you want me to display these?
Can you get them on the screen?
Yeah. We'll come over. There it goes.
Uh-huh.
There we go. Perfect. We need easels over here. So this is the A building, and what everyone can see. This long elevation is what you would see from the river itself. The shorter elevation is what you would see coming down Dutchess Avenue proper. And what we've done is we've created a facade with various materials, brick, hardy plank, siding. We have certainly shingles and stone. We put stone in the elevation. And it actually makes a varied elevation in and out. It's not all one piece that's very flat. You have ins and outs that are 2, 3 feet and 4 feet in delta. So it creates a very varied elevation. We've created a tower element on this elevation that goes towards the northern part of the building itself. That tower element will have actually a rooftop garden area for residents, and potential we'll see whomever else. There'll be another rooftop garden on the southern side of the elevation so that people can go up to the upper floor and enjoy the river itself. This building is a mixed-use building, so the 3 floors above the first are residential. The first floor is retail and office and more commercial. It'll also have amenities for the site itself, indoor amenities such as a pool, health club, just space for like a movies, things of that nature. The B building, let me see. Let's go to the B and C building. The B and C buildings are the ones that are perpendicular after the A building. These are perpendicular to the river. So you would actually see this facade, the shorter facade from the riverfront. You would see these facades from inside the inner court. Well, I'm not going to go back. But between the B, C, D buildings is a courtyard. The courtyard is for amenities, outdoor amenity space for the residents. It'll have a pool, spaces for outside entertainment. It'll have anything that you could think of in terms of entertainment. If you wanted to live there, it's a great space to just hang out on the river, overlooking the river. We've also created a stepped effect with the B and C buildings, where as you can see, the facade towards the river proper is 3 stories. It'll have another rooftop terrace on both the B and C buildings for the residents, and it steps back up to the remainder building for a 4-story building. The D building, which is actually the furthest most building away from the river proper, you can see what it does. This is the backdrop. This is where you have the structured parking, and you have the building on top of the structured parking. It'll fit into the hill, so that what it does, the building around the sides actually slopes up so that it creates a nook, a notch into the hillside. Again, what we've done here is we've also given some rooftop garden areas on the upper level, and it just creates, again, a backdrop for the B and C buildings to the D building. And they all actually tier up away from the river. So if you think about it, the buildings B and C have a 3-story structure, goes to a 4-story structure, and then as it slopes up, the D building is higher than those. So you won't be one flat level building whatsoever. It will give a courtyard that has hierarchy from the back and sloping down towards the rear. Let's see if I can get one more on here. The E and F buildings, which are behind the stacked townhomes, are, again, perpendicular to the river, and they look very similar in terms of the architecture of the B and C buildings. The texture of the buildings themselves are varied again, and I'll show you some thoughts of how we arrived at this. But all the materials are inherent to the area and relative. We certainly know we have brick and we have the sidings and we have the different types of roofing that we're using in the different neighborhoods of the city and town of Poughkeepsie. And again, it's not like you would find this in Phoenix, Arizona or Dallas, Texas. These are materials, and the shapes and forms are what you see around us. The stacked townhome buildings are essentially, as we said, stacked townhomes. This longer elevation and this one are actually side-by-side buildings that you would see from the riverfront. This is the front of the buildings. The back of the buildings would have the garages. You don't see the garages unless you really are driving your own vehicle onto the site. You shouldn't. We have along the front facades, we have porches and things of that nature, so that people can actually, if they wanted to, sit out or walk down to the river, walk out into the neighborhood. And again, the ups and downs and the varied roof types are there to give a varied elevation, so it starts to look more organic in terms of its growth than non-organic. We took some shots around the area proper, and you can see where some of the architectural elements have come from. As an example, these pop-outs and jut-outs, like around this and these areas, and on these buildings, these pieces that are popping out in different areas are certainly inherent in areas on Eastman, which is right here. These type of elements we have, certainly you can see that element, which on the B and C buildings that reflect a mansard that actually does not have a rooftop garden, but that's the idea. You would have a rooftop garden on top of that mansard. Again, we have these sort of dormer elements all over that we find in our area, the pop-out element, the row house idea, we have clapboard, and all this type of architecture that we see proper in our area is being implemented into our design on purpose. Again, brick, siding, some detailing in terms of the facades, that's what we've tried to replicate. Questions?
What about the town?
These are in the town and the city. Depends where you are. What's that? Oh, no Galleria. No, we aren't going to go to Galleria.
If there are no questions for Mike at this precise moment, I was hoping that our brief presentation of Mike's description might prompt an opening of discussion between you, John, and your colleagues, and Tom and his colleagues.
Regarding the...
Hey, Ed, I think you got to talk to the microphone.
Excuse me if I'm in somewhat of a catch-up mode of trying to understand all that's going on, but at any rate, the cleanup effort and the capping and all, De La Valve site, if I'm not mistaken, took out a tremendous amount of dirt, had it cleaned, and then brought it back, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what the procedure was here, if it was the same kind of routine, or
Who knows the answer
something
to that?
different, or what?
Lou?
Or maybe Andrew.
Andrew, can you answer that, or else? Lou, would you help us with that?
Good afternoon/evening. So did you
Grab
want to?
grab the floating mic if you'd like.
Sure.
Basis for the residents.
Are you asking about the process of the cleanup?
Right.
Okay. The soils There was demolition involved, there was underground and above-ground storage tanks removed. There was, no soils were cleaned and returned. They were exported off-site. So all of the export has been completed, and it went to various landfills that accept these contaminated soils and other debris. And they won't be returning to this site. And in its place, we have, under the very careful guideline and auspices of the DEC, we have had certified fill, clean fill placed on the site. And that is what the process, we're in that process right now. Above the existing soils that were not removed is a demarcation layer, which is essentially a visual reminder of where it stopped. And it's like orange fabric, and then above that goes the soils. And there's approximately 150 to 180,000 yards of fill that is being imported right now. We're, it's a
So
significant
when
amount.
construction goes on, though, will any of that soil be disturbed?
Above the demarcation layer, it might be disturbed because, but essentially the buildings would then act as the cap. But
Okay.
I would have to say no, though, because I'm just realizing that there is we're placing it up to the floodplain, so there should be no soils disturbed, and the
I guess I would be as much concerned about possible leakage into the river as well as a concern that ought to be watched carefully through that whole process.
I'm not an environmental scientist.
I'm just saying that needs to be one of the watchdogs that needs to take place through construction.
Yes, and the DEC is very careful in observing us. We have 2 to 3 sets of eyes at most times, including the regional environmental conservation officers.
I just have this kind of thing in the back of my head about the airport landfill that leached out. And we all had to throw in to make sure it got recapped again and done right and so on and so forth. Just so that, that's taken into consideration through the whole process. That's the only thing I was going after. The second question I had, is there a greenway path through this? And I say greenway because that's what we have at Marist and at the Hudson River Rowing Association. I'm wondering if it's all going to get tied in together. And
Yes.
hopefully
There's a Greenway Trail, and that is as a part of the Riverfront Park that
Is
is
that
going to
what
be
I see
installed.
down in front down there?
Yeah, the trail from HRA actually touches the border between this.
Maybe we can get them to clean it up and do something.
But that's the intent, is to continue that trail past this property.
Right.
Have the trail continue so that there will be continued.
Right, the public access will be from the north and the south, which is the Dutchess Avenue, which is a public roadway. And that'll come onto our site. And then from the north, they can approach it from Hudson River Rowing Association.
One of the reasons, Ed, that came to the suggestion that it be all a city park was in response to the city concern, which I think you're echoing, that in fact there be a continuous greenway or park from the southern end to the northern end of the project.
We worked awful hard with the Hudson River Rowing Association to get that Greenway Trail as it is in. Otherwise, it was going to be up on the railroad tracks. And so at any rate, 2 more quick questions. Residential folks that are owning, buying, renting, whatever, is the Center Park strictly residential? Or is it open to the public? That in between the buildings?
The courtyard.
B
and C.
I believe that all of the project is residential other than the one building on Dutchess Avenue.
But I mean, it's residents only. It's not a in park.
At
In
the,
other words, I'm saying I as a resident.
I think you're referring to the courtyard between
Yes.
the U-shaped.
Between BCD, that's residential.
yeah, the only.
I think the question he's asking,
park
public
portion of
access.
it that we're talking about
Wants to know about
is
public.
Up to the river?
waterfront itself.
That's what I thought.
And I don't know if I was
just-
clear enough, Ed, but the land that is being proposed for the walkway or greenway or park is currently owned by the state of New York.
Right.
And that has to be conveyed to somebody to develop the park. And
Right. Lastly, you got a lot of square footage there, and I'm just curious about after this wonderful winter, snow removal, snow storage. You don't have much room to do much snow storage, do you?
Be picked up and removed.
Okay.
So it's going to be, you're saying it's going to be taken off-site?
Yeah.
Well, that may be a map note or something, but.
These will be like a typical city
You
neighborhood where you'll
can't
have,
put that in the river.
I'm sorry, it'll be like a typical city neighborhood where you have to have the snow removed and not just pushed at some point. Yeah, right.
It's something you better watch for going through this. I'm done.
Okay. I like your the first point, Ed, that was good about the, getting down to the demarcation point. That's where the footings are, and that's where the slab sits. You gotta,
Right.
make sure that, you know, we don't, it doesn't violate going through that or whatever it might be.
Oh, yeah, no, we have to, yeah, it's been taken into consideration in terms of engineering for the footings themselves. That was a
Good.
very good point.
Okay.
What role will the DEC play during the construction? Do they plan on inspecting? I assume that post remediation, that if you haven't done it already, that there will be a covenant already filed on the property saying what you can and cannot do. What is their role come construction time?
As a part of our cleanup plan, there's what they call a SMP, a site management plan. And the site management plan, which is reviewed by and controlled by the DEC, that they review and observe us, indicates exactly what is proposed for the property. And that site management plan will include this development. And so they will review, and their concern is equally, if not greater, about what will be leached anywhere and what will move. I believe the nature of these contaminants are not really, they don't migrate like that, except through soil erosion, which is precisely why there's caps and soil erosion controls and things of that nature. But nonetheless, as a part of our cleanup process, there is a site management plan which will ensure that that cap is not disturbed. So,
Okay. Thank you. Mark?
I mean, the last thing they want to do is put on the public what they have a private developer agreeing to do. So they're going to ensure that we do it right.
The question I have is, since we have two portions, city and town, how about policing and highway department? We're going to have the town police do our section and city police do theirs? No crossover? How about sanitation, removal, and also what? How is that going to work? I'm a little confused. I just got back and I'm completely.
Marv, I think I can answer that. One of the things that we've talked with City Ballot, and Paul Ackerman, the City Corporation Council is here, and I think it's spoken to in the finding statement, is that there would be an intermunicipal agreement between the town and the city whereby the town would be first responders, our city would be first responders for emergency purposes, and that'll all have to be worked out. Chris Mader from the Fairview Fire Department is here as well. I don't know if he wants to chime in, but that is something that I know that the members of the town board, for them, is a gotta have to vote on the overlay district.
Yeah.
So that's how that'll be handled. Garbage, I don't have an answer for you. I mean, the town has its own requirements for, residents to pay for their own pickup.
City does too now.
The city has its own as well, so.
Yeah.
But that's something that'll have to be worked out.
That's worked out for snow removal also then.
Well, yeah, I mean, snow removal will be handled by the owner of, these are, right now, there's no subdivision here. This is all going to be owned in common.
Okay.
So there'll have to be an HOA or some entity responsible for the snow removal. Now, the utilities, the sewer and the water utilities are all coming in from the south off of Dutchess Avenue northward. And we have the situation throughout the town where we've got crossing of water and sewer lines from the town and the city to the town, and those are worked out actually between our respective finance departments in terms of metering and what have you.
Okay.
If I could just maybe jump to this waterfront question.
Just go back one
Yeah.
second. Did you have a comment on
No, I was just gonna say that they have to have a private company to pick up the garbage because of the size of the project.
Right.
And again, to my question would be, where are the containers? I didn't notice any garbage containers and, you know.
That's where I was coming in, Joe.
We're evolving.
Okay, no, I'm just, but,
The idea all along has been that they're stored inside the garages and inside the buildings, compacted, and then brought out on the day of pickup.
but would be a private company. Right, there's not, the town entity has nothing to do with that.
We
The
just worked
town-
out how the garbage would be collected. By whom, we haven't worked out yet.
Today, the town of Poughkeepsie has private collection, and so does the city of Poughkeepsie for multiple dwellings.
Neil?
Okay. Just getting back to this question of the waterfront, roughly, it's about, 2 acres or so along the waterfront. About a third of that is actually located in the town. Based on the conversations we had a couple of weeks ago, in particular with Paul Ackerman and the chairman and vice chairman of the city planning board, I've approached the supervisor and most of the members of the town board with the idea of having the city accept the dedication of that entirety of the waterfront, including the portion in the town, as parkland. They are in favor of it. So that's, we'll have to work on the resolutions to make that all happen. And I would anticipate we'll incorporate something like that into the IMA as well.
Peter?
One of the questions I had was about the parkland. Will that require a maintenance agreement between the city and the town?
If the city owns the park, it's their responsibility to maintain it.
Okay, but that'll be clear.
Yes.
I mean, there will be something in writing to that effect.
It hasn't yet been worked out, but
Yeah,
the
we'll work something
proposal-
out, but
The
yeah.
proposal is that it would be a city park to be maintained directly by the city.
Right.
That creek known as Kidney Creek, is the plan there what is the plan? It seems to be fairly active, at least this time of year.
I'll take that one. We were just down there. City engineer, town engineer, myself as the project engineer. We just walked it one more time. What it was a natural stream bottom, a rocky stream bottom. It was the fill that was pushed out into the river over more than 100 years to develop the site. It had railroad tie sides, probably manufactured at the Dutton site at the time, and a concrete slab top. Understanding that the last industrial use of the site was the lumber yard, they had to take incredibly large loads with and bring them across that creek, so the concrete top. That's fallen into disrepair. We went back to mapping from 1913. The creek is there. It's built. It is underground at that point, and the railroad siding that took the lumber out of this site was on that site 100 years ago. So that's been in existence a long time. We don't feel that it's going to be structurally sound going forward. We're investigating a couple of, we did a number of analyses, and we're working it out with the town and the city for a suitable replacement, material, size. That's all being worked out right now between my office, the city engineers, and the town engineers. The proposal is to leave the creek active. We begin construction of the new pipe or the new conduit to the south. Eventually dam it off at the top, make a connection at the top, and then bring it through at the bottom down to the river. So it's going to be quite a process with the tidal, the stream, with the constant flows. And we also had at one of the meetings we had a representative of Metro North there also. They do have a vested interest that water passes safely underneath the railroad. There's been a number of parties involved.
How many stories in the town portion? How many stories?
4.
4?
Three
Hadn't it gone back and forth between 3 and 4? Is it-
When you say that, Peter, going back and forth, oh, I'm sorry, Jerry.
I saw a letter, I can't remember who it was
Yeah.
from, but someone had asked the question about the number of stories.
Right.
We had gotten some information that there would be 3 stories.
Yeah, they're 3-story proper over 1 story of like a garage area. So
Okay.
common space.
So the garage would make the 4th story.
Correct.
Okay.
Carl, anybody else?
It-
Carl?
I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
The park is going to be built after 84 units. How many buildings would that be? And which buildings would they be?
Good question.
That's why I'm here.
I believe, I believe it's the A building, Andrew, A, and what else?
I didn't.
After, what's the 84th unit? What, in terms of phasing, A is the.
Yeah, where do
first
you get to
phase.
84?
It broke out evenly.
Take the microphone with you, please.
Yeah. A has got 51, B has got 41, 59, 40. We had it working out that we could do these two. It's really going to be building A
And the next
and
phase.
some other area.
Yeah.
No.
It's very early.
Building A is 51 units already.
How many units are in Building B?
41, so we'd be over. We'd be into the 90s.
Yeah.
That does conflict with phasing, doesn't it?
Say it again, Robert?
I think it conflicts with what you presented as your phasing.
Let me get the phasing, let me see.
Get the, yeah.
Okay, let me, we've gone back and forth from terms of construction point of view and financing and things of that nature. The phases are, as they're shown here, but we think that in terms of how we'll actually construct it, we probably will build buildings C first, which are 41 units.
Well, hang on a minute. You guys aren't even agreeing on what you want to do, so.
I'm here.
I don't want to do your, I don't want to do your planning in front of this board, so you need to give us some idea at what point you're going to get to 84.
It's just a new
That's the
change.
question.
The phasing, first off, was not a conflict. Our phasing was, number one here was 51 units, and then we were adding in another 12 and 15 on phase two, these townhomes. Phase three would be the park. So we'd be under that 84 units before we did the park. 84 was the limit, was the maximum. We probably were not approaching the maximum.
Well, it was 84 before you had to get the park
And the
complete.
park had to be completed
Right.
at 84.
So the question
yes.
was, is it going to be building A plus some number of units in building B, or is it A plus
No.
building part of C or D?
No, the phasing is building A,
Yeah,
utilities and other necessary, and then these two townhomes that are in the city. There's 12 here, 15 here, and then the 51, so we're under 84. We're below the maximum number of units of 84.
okay.
And then we build the park, and then the project continues. And that's what the phasing shows.
Okay. That's the plan of record,
Yeah, that's the one you have. That's the one that's been submitted to the city and the town.
as of today.
No, as of January.
Okay. So it sounds like, but it sounds like you're going to have a discussion about that at some point. Okay.
Yeah, well, things change.
Okay, understand.
Sure,
All right, but
sure.
that's the plan as of January. Okay, great, thank you. Good question.
One more. The cleanup, is that going to require ongoing monitoring? After you get a final letter from the DEC and they go away, or is there ongoing monitoring required?
Lou, could you answer?
That was my question.
Ongoing, he says.
Ongoing.
So would we receive copies of the reports that are issued by the DEC or whoever the monitoring agency is?
The DEC is
Louis, you got to come up and talk to the microphone so it's recorded.
Okay. The DEC is the monitoring agency, and it's annual reporting.
So they conduct the testing once a year?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
And it's right there in the all the approved plans. It's made and it's a publicly accessible document, and I can't say with absolute certainty, but I believe that the town and the city might be directed specifically.
Does that go on yearly forever? Is that how that works? I don't know. Is there a limit as to how many years that?
I think the accurate answer is we don't know the answer to your question.
Okay.
But we can find out.
Got it. Thank you. Peter, any more?
No, thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, to continue with that, does the EDC monitoring the fill that comes in on the property?
I'm sorry. Well, I didn't know. I didn't hear the question.
Does the EDC monitoring the fill that comes in on the property, the clean stuff?
Oh, yeah. They monitor before we get the fill, and they watch where it goes.
Thank you.
Where's it coming from, by the way?
Wherever it's certified. We have several sources.
Oh, okay.
Not that easy to get 180,000 yards of fill.
Big holes.
Anybody?
We better keep our eye out in the town. I think I know where a lot of it went the last time.
That's true. That is true. Comment, Carl, any comments, anything?
I just had a question to remind us of the total number of units again, overall.
How many units?
384, 84 in the town.
384.
Carl.
And 84 in the town.
Yeah.
I guess, I like that you've, Peter took my question about the 84th unit there, so that was good. Got that out in the open. I like the rooftop gardens that you've included on some of those. It looks like pretty consistent architecture between the town and the city, those buildings, the townhomes. I know there's the green space courtyards in the city side there, nothing similar on the town buildings, I guess, is the only comment I would have on that. It'd be easier to see the main plan. So I guess is the only green space then on the town side, the park in front, is that the intention?
Yeah, that's correct, Carl. But it's funny because I think everyone overlooks that in a way. Everyone focuses but doesn't focus on it. And I'll say why. The green space between B, C, and D are really nice. But if I'm living there, I'm going to be thankful I'm on the Hudson River. And that's a park. That'll be connected north to the HRA and south, hopefully at some point down towards Warrius. And if you think about it, that's the greatest asset of this site. And it's the best green space we could ever have. The nice part of this green space in the middle of BCD is more pointed, but it really is for everyone's access. Doesn't matter if you're in the city or the town.
Yep.
So
Yep.
They can use that, but I'm going to be on the river if I was living there.
Wondering how the density of those buildings versus the townhomes, I guess that's what I was thinking of.
Between BCD and the townhomes,
They higher density in general?
the higher densities on the
Are
city.
they apartments or are they condos kind of?
They're multifamily, right?
Just multifamily, okay.
Yeah.
You can, yes.
Condos though, or apartments, or
Say it again? I'm sorry.
condos or apartments though, or multiple?
I think it's a good, thank you for asking, because we need to clear up this issue. I think in the findings statement, there was a recitation that these were for sale dwellings. I think that what is going to become clearer as we proceed is whether these are going to be for sale or rental is going to depend on the marketplace. The goal is to build for sale units, but if there's not a market for sale units, there will be rental units at least for some period of time until there's a market to sell them. Probably, given their configuration, probably they would need to be condominiums, because I don't know how, given their configuration, you could separate them into individual, fee simple townhouses. But the clear answer is none of us, including the developer, know what the marketplace is going to present when these start to get built.
Yeah.
Richard, I thought you'd have the answer to that, but
I check with my wife. She has a lot of answers.
thank you.
Does the parking garage access is all from the North Water Street there, or is there some access coming from within the site as well?
Oh, it comes off of North Water Street.
It's all just off
Yeah,
north
and,
and then,
yeah,
and then
right.
Well-
And a little bit internal, but never from the river proper.
You could access it from the roadway.
oh, you could, okay, that's
You
what
can
I'm
get in this way, loop down to underneath. There'll be circulation on the lower floor, whether from the garage, which is underneath Building D, to the garage, to the first floor of the garage here. You could access off North Water to the upper level of the garage, or go down to the bottom, proceeding to the development proper, or going right into the lower level. So a number of ways to get there.
Okay,
But it's mostly off of North Water, Carl.
yep.
You-
Have you made any, back to, I guess my last question is concerning the trail. Has there been any discussions with Central Hudson about crossing that final little piece to get to the elevator of the walkway bridge?
I know there are discussions, but, we're not a party to them. That is the goal and very big focus of people within the city and other interested parties. And I think that there's somewhat of a commitment by Central Hudson. But that is, you've only got a couple of 100 feet now. That's going to bring what'll be a continuous Greenway Trail
Right.
from the upper landing in Warius, and then you go right on through our site, and then you go right up to the Hudson River Rowing Association and the Marist Park there.
Right, so it'd be a nice piece to have that completed, because I remember at one meeting, somebody saying, no, you have to go up and around and back down again.
They had an outside date, and I think that it's getting, the outside date, well, just by passage of time, the outside date is coming closer. But it's actually gotten a little shorter, but I'm not privy to those discussions.
All right.
Mind if I ask?
I assume as we develop the park, there'll be benches and garbage cans and maybe bike racks, all these different
Yes.
elements
Yeah, site amenities.
to make it. All right, thanks. It's looking good.
As part of the submission to the city, if it winds up agreed that this is going to be a city park, as part of the submission and approval by the city will be an approved design for the park.
Okay.
I have one more question. Back to architectural review in the final. Will the town and city will be different? Our own planning board give the approval for the architectural review for the city, town part, and the city does their part?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
But Marv, that was also one of the impetus for this particular meeting. We had a smaller conversation with Robert Levine and Tom O'Neill a couple of weeks ago, and the conversation turned to architecture and how do we make sure that we're not doing, log cabins on one side and glass and steel monolith on another, to try to get some coherency to it. And that's actually why we're here today. It's one of the major elements that we hope to kind of work our way through.
You pardon me because I haven't been here in the initial portion up till tonight. It's my first time at it, so if I ask questions that are redundant, please forgive me.
You mentioned the rooftop gardens, and we're not talking about rooftops that are green like Marist, where the roof is actually plantings.
Correct. We're
Okay.
not talking green roofs, we're talking rooftop garden areas.
So it's just open space with some greenery and chairs and things for people to congregate and
Correct.
make use of the view of the river and things like that.
Yes.
There's going to be like 4 or 5 of them. Are there any planned in any of the town buildings?
No, they're all actually inhabited, so, no, in different ways. We thought that the multi-story buildings would certainly have need for that, but the townhome pieces actually have front-to-back floor plans. So at some point, you're going to be able to see the river.
There's no common accesses for the townhouse buildings, so
They're all internal.
whereas in the mid-rises,
Right.
you have common hallways, you have elevators, you have
That's
things
a
of
good
that
point.
nature.
That's well taken. I heard you say there were 2 swimming pools, one for Building A and one in the courtyard between B, C, and D?
Exterior between B, C, and D, and interior on A.
Oh, an indoor pool?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, got it.
Yeah.
Great, all right. Going back to the architecture overall, I would think that we would want to make sure that we're all in agreement that it will be consistent between, if we ever do get to phase 6, that it won't change somehow. I mean, we would need some kind of assurances that.
Right. Well, I know in the town you have the ARB and that actual materials and things of that nature will certainly come in for play, and that's part of the site plan review. And in the city actually takes in that, I believe, into their own findings at the end of the, so, and they require materials and things of that nature in any way, in any shape. So both municipalities, I think, are covered by the approval processes.
Okay.
I think we agree, A, that in the technical sense, they're separate approvals. In a bigger sense, we need to make sure that the design in both municipalities is compatible and mutually agreeable.
Okay. I mean, all right, fine. Is there any, Naomi, anything you want to ask or any questions? Or
I do.
Robert, or?
Yep, I have just 2 quick questions. You have the 384 units, roughly how many 2-bedroom units are in there? Approximately.
Approximately 60%, 65%,
Okay.
somewhere there.
And how many 3-bedroom units? Do you have any 3s?
3 bedrooms are, say, another 20, 25%, and the remainder are the 1 bedrooms.
Okay, so there are no 4-bedroom.
125%.
Well, no, that's why I said remainder.
That's okay, just a
See, I
just a
didn't want
rough
to do the
idea.
math. I know I'd be wrong, so.
Squeezing those extra units thin already.
Joe and I were wondering, these are going to be gas, it's going to be gas heat, Central Hudson?
I believe so,
Natural
yes.
gas. We were just thinking about the infrastructure, the age of the main lines going to that project. Have you looked at that at all as a consideration or a concern?
Our original discussions with city engineer on the mains in Dutchess Avenue really revolved around the water and the sewer, not to the gas yet. We're going to seek out the plates for the gas in that area from Central Hudson. We'll start some initial dialogue as to the tap quantity and can they service us. What we typically do is send out a letter that we call a will serve letter. Will you service this site? I have to go back in my files and see if we've received that from Central Hudson. I can't recall.
Could you let us know or engineer?
Oh, sure, absolutely. As far as water goes, the water in North Water Street is all new main. That was all done in conjunction with the replacement of Hoffman Street Bridge. So we're going to take, however, the water going down Dutchess is vintage, is what I understand. It needs to be replaced. So from Dutchess Avenue and the intersection of Dutchess and North Water Street, all the way down Dutchess, new taps on for the users. There's a few homes and a business on Dutchess as well. Coming into the site, and then it will loop out. Our main will go back up the ramp that goes up to North Water Street. So there'll be 2 connections. There'll be 2 points of service to provide more than ample water and flow and pressure.
My concern wasn't so much about the water. There's an ample supply. It would be more in terms of the gas line there,
Right.
not only in its condition, but the sizing
Right.
of the gas main there, if it's sufficient to service 384 units.
We'll get a will serve letter, and we can provide that to the town. That's no problem.
Oh.
Okay.
And I just one other thing, wanted to make, Ed, I think, had a question before about the courtyard. I'm not sure if it really addressed it, and that's, I think part of his question was, will the public have access to the courtyards between the buildings? My guess would be that they would not have access because that's part of a condominium.
Correct.
Privately owned.
Yeah, the public that have units on the site will, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Any questions? Robert? Tom?
I guess I
Could you address the elevation changes? I think we have an idea on the city planning board, but if the town would be advised.
Say it again, Robert.
Well, the difference in the elevation of the park to the actual complex.
Yes.
Is it all the same?
This is like called Central Hudson. But they build them differently. Where I live now, they like water to the city and they sewage to the town.
In order to make it easier to see, what we did was we split the site about in half. We didn't split it on the municipal boundary, just so that, to make a larger scale, what we did was we showed the southern half of the site on one side and then the northern half on the other side. So I'm looking at the southern side. The park right now, of course, we're going to have riprap going down into the water to provide a wave break. That's, say elevation 0 is where we're going to start, let's say. The park begins at about elevation 4. It rises ever so slightly across the path, and then it would slope up. I believe we had a 1-on-3 or 1-on-4 slope up to about elevation 10 at the road. The 100-year flood in the Hudson River is elevation 8. So the park would be permitted to be inundated during a 100-year storm, and a storm slightly lower than that, similar to Warius and many parks on the river. What happens is the water comes up, deposits floatables, trash and lumber, floating logs, what have you, and that would have to be cleaned up. That's similar to what's done in the parks up and down the Hudson. The roadway, all of the roadways are up and out of the floodplain, so there is always the availability for the emergency responders to get in, no matter what the storm event is, over the 100-year storm. I said the 100-year storm was 8. The lowest elevation on the road is around 9.5 or 10, so we've got some freeboard or some factor of safety there as well. The buildings themselves, I'll give you elevations. I've got them on another plan, but what happens is the roadways rise up. It does exactly what the site does now. It's very low at the river's edge right now, and it rises mildly as it comes back. There is a rock cut in this area that's very, very steep. That's we're going to maintain. We're not going to change that. The road rises from about elevation 6 down at the bottom below our entrance, and then rises up to around 24 where we're pulling an entrance in to the upper road, around elevation 12 where we're coming in here. It's similar on the town side. Along the front of the park, it's elevation 4 and 5 across the walkway. The base of the slope is about elevation 6, rises to around elevation 10 and 11 at the road once again, and then rising gradually to the rear. The back of the site is elevation 14, 16, around that, the back road here. All of the homes are going to be about 3 or more feet above flood stage. We're very conscious of that. We just had Sandy. Sandy was the equivalent of about a 500-year storm event because it backed the water. It wouldn't let the water go down the Hudson. It backed it up. We're conscious of that. The 500-year storm event is elevation, I think it's 9.7. We're well above that with first floor. We're well above that with roadways. So we took all that into account.
Maybe we should put on the table, Andrew, and respond. There have been requests by interested parties that the park area be raised higher than we're proposing to raise it, and to keep out of the storm area. And it's my understanding from Lou, and I hope you could help explain it, the position of the applicant as to why the applicant cannot raise the park higher than you've just described.
Well, one of the most contentious things about the entire development is the size of the park. We want to keep it as large as possible. This plan that I have down here illustrates some of the changes that we've made after they have been submitted to you. So this is not a plan that you have. The plan you have has parking inside of the park. We removed that. We took it out. We added a cul-de-sac. We made this all public space and open to circulation. We brought the road back down to the bottom, but we still have to have negotiations with the property owner to do that. We just can't fit everything. So there's a couple of things that we added on to the plan. We're proposing riprap at the waterfront, similar to Warius Park. We've heard the comments from Sina Cutson. Jeff left, but we heard him. We got his book, and Liz had the same comment, I think. Do some soft shore. So we're going to mix it up, and we do have some soft shore proposed. It wasn't on the plans that you had received, but we were going to mix it up. That soft shore rises back at about 1-on-2 slope. So every foot you rise, you're losing 2 feet of park. We can't go farther into the water. We're not going to fill any more into the water. We're going back from there. So the farther you rise, the farther you're coming back. There's a tremendous cost to bring in this fill as well. And there is no sense to have a park above flood stage when no one's going to be there when it's at flood stage. Nobody's going to be there when we have the 100-year storm walking along the river. That's in their right mind. So.
Just one more point that might bear saying is the parks along the shore are at one level, and to increase our parkland, the new public park up another 5 feet would be totally incongruous with the entire walkway with the Greenway Trail. And the final and maybe biggest concern we have is that is the approved plan with DEC, and to vary from that would require a whole review and years of delay.
Okay. Thank you.
John, could I ask a quick question?
Yes.
John,
Chris.
could I ask just a quick question?
Go
ahead.
Just real quick, I like parks, don't get me wrong. So one of my issues here as a fire chief with trying to get in and out of a building, out of an area, you've taken the parking away for the park. Where do we anticipate these people to leave their vehicles? We have regattas going on, we have Balloon Fest, parking down at the riverfront when these events happen. It makes ingress and egress very difficult for us as the fire department.
Right.
So when we have large numbers of people here.
We heard that too, lack of parking for events. We heard that. We got that from the either at the city or the town. We're fortunate enough with Dutchess Avenue to have a 70-foot wide right-of-way. Probably the most conventional thing that all your board members have ever seen on any of these subdivisions is 50 feet. It's 70 feet wide. It affords us the opportunity to do a great deal of parking on Dutchess Avenue. The water main in Dutchess at Vintage and Dutchess at Vintage, it really needs to be rebuilt, and it's going to be by this project. We're going to widen that, put a sidewalk up it, do the landscaping that we could possibly do, and stripe it with some parking. Right now, we're showing quite a bit of diagonal parking on the south side, and then straight-in parking on the north side. A couple of spaces down at the bottom at the cul-de-sac. And then this is open to the public, this circular area here. We're probably going around Building A. We're going to have to mark some of those spaces off as private so that we have enough for our property owners, the residential, the retail users. So there'll have to be some division of those spaces, but we did add quite a few spaces utilizing Dutchess Avenue. And still giving you, I think it's 28-foot, or 26-foot minimum width. I got to check that, 26 or 28.
26 feet is correct.
Right, good.
This probably is an irrelevant question, but would the owners here, the condominium, purchasers of condominium, be required to have flood insurance?
No, because we're up and out. We're up and out by feet, like 3¼ feet above the 100-year flood stage right now. So the answer is no. The other reason that we did this, we didn't want to have that terrific burden on these owners or drive some owners away. So the answer is no.
Thank you. Neil, did you have something?
Question. And actually, I think this is really more of a question for Tom and Robert and Naomi. There was a plan that was circulated roughly about a year ago that had the parkland, development of the parkland as phase 6. And I stated my objections to it. It got moved up to Phase 3. It seems to me, however, that even Phase 3 seems a little late to me in the process, particularly since we're now talking about city takeover of the ownership of that. And the city's ownership of the parkland, for just speaking for myself, certainly gives me a comfort that, that ultimately, that it ensures public access to the waterfront, and ultimately that something will occur there in the way of, paths and whatever else. And I don't know ultimately what the city may choose to do with the park aside from the walking path. If you want to put swings and things like that down there, that's entirely up to the city. But I guess the question is, the representation is at the end of the process, we will have a design for the waterfront, whatever that may actually look like. But what about the implementation? I haven't heard that part of it. And I don't know what the folks in the city have in mind. I can tell you that as a condition of the town's approval for the overlay, and we actually have it in our overlay legislation, is an absolute requirement for public access as part of the town board's approval. To my mind, that speaks to something that has to happen very, very early in the process, in the development process. Now, granted, this is now something that is going to be owned, the waterfront's now going to be owned by the city. I guess I'm kind of posing it back to our colleagues in the city. What about the phasing? Are you satisfied that Phase 3 is soon enough? Or, I personally would like to see this thing moved up much earlier in the development process in terms of actual construction of the public access at the waterfront. So I'm just putting it back out to you guys.
To answer the question that I posed originally, what actually is the number of units based on your phasing?
Robert, can you speak in the microphone?
What is the actual number of units in Phase 1 and then in Phase 2?
Building A is phase number 1. It's 51 units. Phase 2 was 15 plus 12, so 27 in Phase 2. So 51, 27, it's less than 80. It's less than 80, so. 84 was the cap, was the max, and we're not hitting the max. But we have to understand that we had to generate some income to build the park.
Well, let me ask the question a different way then. I don't know that the town certainly intends to seek recreation fees for the residential units that will be constructed here. And that is independent and apart from whatever may happen to the waterfront access, the public access. Is the city contemplating the same thing? Or are you looking to accept whatever you may have otherwise received in recreation fees to develop the parkland? I don't know. I'm asking the question.
Our board, I don't believe, has had that discussion.
Okay.
Because up until recently, this was, in essence, a joint venture with the town. And it is only recently that we've been approached with the concept that the city and the town's portion of this project would proceed independently. So I don't think we ever got to that actual issue as far as a final or semi-final determination. And it's part of an ongoing process that has been very difficult.
All right, so you're still trying to figure out how this thing is ultimately going to be, who's going to pay for it and how is it going to be constructed? You may have design, but there's the implementation portion of it. Somebody's got to pay for it.
Absolutely. We're not. Okay. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Through no fault of the planning boards.
Yeah. No. I understand.
My primary focus, I believe the board's primary focus of late has been the park, the walkway, the undisputed right of passage from one end of this project to the other. That has always been contemplated. And so when we first heard of this bifurcation, if you will, of the city and the town's portion, that was certainly our most immediate knee-jerk response. Well, we'll consider that, and I have no problem considering that bifurcation. But I will not consider anything other than an open walkway from one end of this project to the other. And we've been assured that that can happen and will happen, and we had a meeting 2 weeks ago to start that you were at, Neil, to start that process of ensuring that happens. So while I'm speaking, and I'll try to be very brief, I was happy to be part of the group that requested this joint meeting. The architecture for the project has improved significantly over the course of the past 2 years. I wanted to get this board's reaction, if you will, to what is presently proposed, to see if you good folks had any thoughts, suggestions that can be passed along to the developer and to our board as to what additional additions, amendments can or should be made to the plan. So I'm hoping that we do this again, number one, because it's helpful. It's helpful and it's necessary, especially if there's going to be a bifurcation. Everybody has to be on the same page.
Right.
For the city, this is so extremely important for us historically, going forward economically, that our board has taken the position that this has to be something special. Mm-hmm. This can't just be another, apartment project, multi-family project. It is the waterfront. And for us in the city, given all that we have and what we don't have, which is decidedly different from what you folks enjoy in the town, it is so absolutely important that we make this project the best that we can possibly make it. Because if we don't do that, there's a chance that in 10 years it becomes something far less than is now anticipated. And that's a potential problem.
And I think that is one of my concerns, is the fact that it's not a fact, but if it became purely rental, that's a possibility.
Well, and that's quite frankly, that's my biggest concern. When this project was first presented, it was as a for sale units, and that at that location, if built appropriately, it can only attract high-end
buyers.
Yeah, it can only succeed and succeed in a way that I think everyone in this room would want it to succeed. Anything else is problematic, and unfortunately, the developer has been unable to give us any concept of what they really anticipate here. And you heard the answer, and that's the answer that we've been given, and that no study has been accomplished to determine who will buy there.
So they've done no market, I'll call it a market research studies?
We've been told, we've asked for it, and we've been told no, and we've never seen one.
Right. Because, owners are going to take better care of their property, they're going to have more invested in it. It's part of building a community.
There's no one in the room more hopeful to have a sale project than the developer.
Right.
But to say that we know that they can be sold is something we don't know.
And I at this stage of the game, I agree with that also. But there must be some way to ferret out whether or not that's more likely than not. Which direction. I don't know. I mean, the markets change. I realize that. And over time, things change. But we need to get a project that's going to enhance the city and help the developer and enhance his own, return. And the town, right?
If I may, John, there's one other thing I assume somebody is also looking towards the state to either grant or provide some funding towards the Greenway process. I know Marist and the Hudson River Rowing Station did get funding from
Can
the
you
state.
say that again, Ed, for the hard of hearing?
Which one of us?
I believe Marist, I know Marist got funding from the state through grants, et cetera, for the Greenway trail, et cetera, as well as some other park amenities. So I would assume that kind of funding may be available still through the state. And I would assume you're looking into that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. LaPerche. Yes, we, actually, the state has looked favorably on the project, has already granted through the city as the grantee monies for the design of the park, which we were providing the matching funds. So it was up to about $500,000, of which we were going to provide matching funds in the form of the cleanup that we were investing now. Excuse me. We hope that the state will again look favorably toward implementing the construction of the park as well and help us with that, because we're not seeking funds from any of the municipalities. So that is...
I think that's what Neil is also implying, though. As soon as you have state funding that's basically taxpayer-driven, there's that need to make sure that we see this continuation all the way through, including the town as well. So it's just one of those.
If I could build that park today and afford to do that right now and take it off this table, I would have done it, because that is the focus of all of our planning, all of the board discussions. It's all about the park, and the development is an afterthought.
We can sympathize with you. We have the state hospital project that we've been trying to get through some of that stuff as well. Yeah.
But the short answer is, the state has already indicated a desire to implement this, and specifically toward the Greenway Trail, toward the park. And I hope that they will continue to act that way. We intend to put in a grant. There's the design part grant has been a little more difficult than we anticipated in processing. And I'm hoping that that wouldn't trip us up on the actual construction. But we've proceeded to design the park. We have a park plan. I can provide additional copies. I think that I've given them, but I'll give more. I know I've given them to the city. So that the park, the bones of the park is already described.
Can I give an even shorter answer? While O'Neill Dutton would be very happy to obtain grant funds, the City Planning Board has asked that O'Neill Dutton represent and build into the approvals its obligation to design and build the park, and O'Neill Dutton is prepared to do that. So if grant funds come, that's good, but the obligation will be to design it and build it, not contingent on grant funds.
Right, it's not contingent on those funds, but we will graciously accept them.
Hope you get them.
Do we maybe want to, one of the parts of the conversation a couple of weeks ago, Mike, do you have material boards with you to go along with the architectural presentation? If we can kind of flip back over to that and have
Yeah, I was
that conversation.
looking, Neil. Keith was supposed to have brought them from my office, unless, there he is. Yes, I do.
Okay.
We just happen to have it.
He just
Mike
happened to
goes
be
like
here.
that.
Mike, we knew that before you. We knew that before you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just add about the rental and sales?
Sure.
Because to me, it seems that if they do agree on sales, how do we know that the owner will turn around and rent the units?
Well, you don't.
I mean, I know, it just that has to be some kind of agreement for that, because then we don't want another so-called.
You don't want a roving hotel.
Right.
I think part of the answer to that is under the condominium constitution and bylaws. Not always, but sometimes they'll have a provision in there whether or not the owners are qualified to rent.
Or that the renters have to be qualified in some way.
Somebody,
Or just not rent it at all.
Yeah. They're all different, I guess.
I think, John, that, the project in itself being, close to the train station and everything, if it's well integrated with the sidewalks and marketed that way, I think it will attract owners of commuters from downstate.
And don't let's forget Marist College.
yes. Well, I don't want to keep hawking on it, but the drainage, and Andrew said, you're designing to a 100-year flood. I just went through twice, 18 inches of rain in less than 5 hours.
We're designing for far beyond the 100-year flood.
And this was designed for that, and we lost 1,400 cars and 400 units.
I don't know what that situation is
Well,
whatsoever, but I could tell you that this
I'm worried
one,
about the drainage coming down,
Okay.
down the streets, from the top down
Right.
into the river. And that's where I'm concerned about the drain. What's the drainage going to do? Float everything right down to the river, into the park.
no, that's absolutely not the case.
But isn't that a little different? You're talking about in Florida, right?
Yeah, but
Tropical rains?
tropical rainstorm, but we're getting them up here now. Had it, and just look at the snowstorms we just went through up here. I'm a little concerned about that. And, parking out there, you never know when that storm's gonna hit. They forecasted a small storm. And under the deity upstairs here, God helped stop part of it. But 1,400 cars in one trip and 400 units is, I'm looking at this thing and saying, you're up here, up at the top, and you're down here. You get that 18 inches of rain in such a short time, it's like a flood going right down. It's not just a little drizzle coming down the street.
Yeah, if we get 18 inches of rain, you get a lot more trouble than just this one site. I'll tell you right now.
Oh, yeah, we're looking at one site right now. We're not looking at it's already been built for 100 years.
That being the case, the entire site is, all of the parking areas are, my lowest elevation in a parking area is 10.5. The 100-year flood is 8.
Yes.
2.5 feet above to park a car. Now, the lowest floor is 3.25 feet. I'm telling you that we've accounted
Okay.
for that. I'm telling you that we looked at that, we accounted for that.
Is this being,
And I've got city and town engineering departments looking at me
Right.
that I've looked at that, so. And the architect also is very concerned about the buildings, so.
Yeah.
So we've placed them quite high.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what happens, Marvin, is they have to look at this from an engineering point of view. Certainly, the town engineer and the city engineer, along with the project engineer,
well,
certainly will
earth
take all that
warming
into
is
account.
changing the rules that we've had
wants a
for
copy.
50 years or more. And everybody's trying to build new rules and new design rules.
Right.
And that's all I'm looking at.
Yep, and I think there's a safety factor that will be certainly built into these calculations. Yeah, but it's a good point. Do you guys want to, yeah, well, Puff, look, here's materials, and look what we did Richard Cantor. He's a lot younger. I don't know what happened.
Like 20 years ago.
Oh, wait a minute. In Richard's defense, is that an improvement? I don't know.
His wife had trade.
I'm trying to help you, Richard, I don't know.
I just say you got younger.
Richard said that he had to leave. He said, just sit there, nobody even know that I'm gone. I just want to clarify one issue, or help to try to clarify one issue, and that's with the remediation. Currently, DEC would be monitoring the remediation as it's progressing. They probably, like Lou said, do have people on there constantly. But there's not going to be any shovel in the ground until there's a certificate of completion of that remediation. And part of obtaining that is going to be a final engineering report that would show that it was done according to specifications of DEC. And there's also going to be a site management plan. Once that is approved by DEC, there's going to be an environmental easement that's going to be filed against the property, to run with the land. And in that site management plan is going to be a monitoring plan, and it will continue in perpetuity. And it will require at least annual monitoring and filing with the DEC that it's been done. There can be other inspections by DEC if they feel that there's some reason to do it, but for the most part, that's going to be the responsibility of the property owner, whoever ultimately owns the property, to continue to implement that management plan. So there are going to be those safeguards with that environmental easement that will be filed and run with the land.
Thank you. Carol?
With regards to the relocation of Kidney Creek, is that something the DEC is aware of? Because if you're going to relocate, you have a demarcation line, you're not going to be excavating below a certain level. Is the relocation of the creek going to be below that level? And
Well, can I just address part of that? Once the COC is completed, there's gonna be the site management plan, which would prohibit any, excavation beyond certain points. So that is either gonna have to be addressed before the COC is done, or it's gonna have to comply with the COC.
My shoes are dusty because we met out there today. We're out there a second time. First time was in the middle of the winter. This time was a little more palatable, but we walked out with the city engineer, the town engineers, representatives. That will be, the existing pipe is 2 foot, at the river's edge, is about 2 foot below, it's -2 elevation, okay? So it's below normal tide, thank you. It's going to be put back in exactly the same place, and the reason is it has to be. That pipe is at a very flat slope. We're coming in from what we found was, what we believe we found was what the railroad built, and that might have been 150 years ago. It's a stone structure is what we found. We're going to tie into that exactly where it is, and then discharge the water exactly where it is today, elevation-wise. So will that be below the demarcation layer? It will be at the elevation that it is today. So it'll be below grade. That was a pipe, a subsurface pipe. So it will be below what was existing grade, yes. Did I answer?
So you're going to be doing the excavation to get down to that,
Yes.
again, to relocate that line?
There's no again, it's the first time.
Right.
Right, initially, one time, if you will.
I think the point, they're seeking approval for that pipe now so that they can put the pipe in before they do the fill. I think that's the answer you were looking for. So it will not be re-excavated. The pipe's going to be put in, and then they're going to put the fill in the cap.
Right.
Do you want to discuss the architecture and the materials and?
Sure. Do you want me to hand these around, or?
No, well, that's, you could show.
Where is that? Where's the other microphone?
Why don't you put one of the boards up too that shows the typical building so we can.
It's working.
Yeah, it's working.
I'm sorry.
Put one of the boards up that shows one of the buildings so we can.
Hey, how could you?
Okay.
I'm the chairman, I can't eat. You want me to get your book?
Oh, that's good.
I'm good.
Yeah. So, this is AZAC. This is a material that we use for trim work and things of that nature. It's a synthetic material. It's hardy. It will last a long time. It's something that we will need on the river with what we have for elements. And this, you can see, would be where the white would be. Any white trim, anything of that nature would be of this material.
Is that glued on or is that nailed on?
What's that?
Glued on or nailed on?
No, they nail, yeah. And then this is, again, this is the AZAC material, and this is for the larger areas that you would see, like in between the windows and things of that nature. Again, it's the same material base, just in a different type. It's larger sheet materials. These are the shingles that you would find up in, like, the gable ends in some of the areas. So these are, again, synthetic materials that are attached. In terms of the finish, they are long-lasting, they're weather-resistant. This is what you really want, again, in the environment. When we talk about the environments of this project, it's on the river. There's a lot of wind and snow and sleet that occurs that, you won't find inland. So this is you need very hardy materials that will not break down over a period of time. This is the siding material. This is a hardy board plank, hardy material. This is what you can see. Again, it's a cementitious-based material. It comes pre-finished. It's, again, a nailed surface, sometimes screwed. And what it is, it's pre-finished so that there's a long-lasting finished material that will be there for a very long amount of time without maintenance needs.
Good.
I just have photos of the stone base material, and actually we have not selected exact materials for the stone or the brick itself, but this will just give you a palette of what can be attained, but it'll look like a Hudson Valley stone. It won't be a rounded stone that you'll find out west or down south. It'll have basically, it looks like it's a stacked stone. The brick will be, I always call like a reddish brick. It won't be a pink or yellow or anything like that nature. It'll be a true brick color. So again, evoking back, and you can see that on these on this elevation.
We used to manufacture a lot of bricks here.
What's that?
They used to manufacture a lot of bricks here in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, the brick was the brick factories were the staple of this area.
Yeah.
So again, that's why we as architects like to use the brick in this area, just because that's what we had. Again, when we look at this type of project, it's When we look at this type of project, it's really recall in terms of what we had here in the valley for a long time. As you can see, it's not a modern-looking structure. It looks like it should have been here for a while.
Right.
And that was what we're trying to evoke here. So, and again, the shingles are a baseline heavyweight shingle, timberline or something of that nature. So as we go along and as we come closer to conclusion and final approvals, we certainly will bring exact materials as the architecture starts to evolve a little bit further. But essentially, these are the palettes that we're talking about.
Okay. I mean, this is certainly head and shoulders above what you showed us a while back. You know, you've listened to what we had to say, and you've made some very appropriate changes and substantial changes. I for one, think it looks pretty darn good.
Thank you. Yeah, as a project, any project of this magnitude size as it goes along, you know, we take the thoughts of the board very to heart, and I think it makes a better project, and that's what we're trying to do for everyone, the boards in both the city and the town, and also the residents and the area. And the idea is that this project will look, when it's done, like it's been here for a long time. It'll start to bring the city back to the riverfront instead of receding away from the riverfront. Mm-hmm. That has happened for a very long amount of period of time.
Any comments or input on the architecture?
I'll just say one part of our town code is that you don't have any big, long expanse that looks all the same. So the way you've done it here makes it look like multiple buildings, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, we certainly don't have that, Carl, on purpose. Thank you.
Tom, anything? Liz, anybody, any questions?
I did have a couple questions. One of the things, I know there was discussion of cleanup, and one of the things that keeps coming up is what has already been done or will still be done with the state-owned land in terms of cleanup?
The entire parcel has been cleaned up. We haven't, bifurcated that, so to speak. So we're treating it as one parcel for the purposes of the cleanup. All of the contaminants on the parkland itself, there was a building, underground storage tank. There were railroad tracks and ties and impacted soils. Those have all been removed. And the fill process will continue. The only part of the cleanup that the edge, the river edge, is still, we're working on that design, which again has been submitted as primarily, it's primarily riprap, but with some vegetation interspersed with it. Similar to the proposed designs in the developing the waterfront literature that was given out by Scenic Hudson. But other than that, it's fairly simple cap. It's just the levels of the cap. In the park area, it's a 2-foot level. And as you get into the development area, it's higher than that to pull it out of the floodplain. But we haven't, avoided cleaning up. We've been cleaning up everything.
Thank you. Would it be fair for me to say in terms of the town planning board that we were pretty okay with the architecture as they presented, or any?
I just had a question on the HVAC units. Has that been thought of yet? Some on the grounds, all on the roofs? Anything like that have you guys discussed?
The HVAC for the units will be internal. We're looking at something called like a Magic Pack, which is they're internal. They have grills that let the air circulate through, and so that you won't see a slew of condensers anywhere, which we didn't like.
So the condensers and all that be internal to the building?
They're internal too. We may have some for common space and things of that nature, but essentially the units themselves are self-contained.
Okay, interesting.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I would say that we're pretty much in agreement that the architecture, is good.
Thank you.
Okay.
I believe it'll be a big benefit for just the scenery looking across on the other side of the river, looking towards us. It's going to be very impressive.
I really believe that this project will change the face positively, exceptionally positively to the face of the river and Poughkeepsie, both the town and the city. This is going to make a mark for the city, and I think Tom has brought that forward many a time, that we need something very special. This is very special. We don't have anything like this in this area at all, even close. So.
I think it's also good that we got a local person who's been here, like yourself. They're using local people to design this and put this together, and I think that's great.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, I agree. It does.
Thank you.
It wasn't always that way.
He wasn't, or it was?
New to this.
Yes, I know.
Relatively.
But I'm saying I think that's it's an added feature and added enhancement. So I think that's
I'm
good.
local.
It has helped tremendously.
I'm local, and I applied to be the architect, but I didn't get it.
We couldn't get a letter of reference from your wife.
Good cause shown.
Let me go back to the walkway issue along through the park. I too would like to see something done sooner than later. Would it be feasible? It's just something to consider. That once the capping and all that's done, we put the walkway in, and maybe some of the amenities could come later, but at least the access up and down the park could be done, and some other phasing to be determined. The benches and whatever it might be could be worked out. So maybe we can get something a little sooner than later. It's just a thought on if you want to consider.
The configuration of the path.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Certainly something that we will take up. I just wanted to point out that you want to stabilize that park and make sure it stays where it is and exactly as it is before you start putting a path
Sure. No,
in.
I mean, obviously.
So I think it would be.
We don't want to do it twice.
We don't want to do it twice, and we want to make sure that the soils are placed nice and the soil erosion controls and this, before we start building it. But I certainly also don't want to disturb it once it's completed with the path. The path, right now, which is in the design, is going to be a mixture of textures. It's not all just one like asphalt path. It's going to have paver stone and concrete, printed concrete. And things like that to make it pop a little. We also intend to have little, brass plaques, probably signage, some benches, and things like that. And that is in the proposal right now. So we intend to put that park in as quick.
Thank you. Hey, what you might want to do is have people buy bricks and, make donations and buy a bench and, it's like the walkway.
The brick.
Oh, bricks, I'm sorry.
On a serious note, John, the point raised by the town representatives and the city representatives as to the importance of the timing of the walkway is registered, very loud and clear, and we will get back to both boards to see what the most we can propose with certainty and without equivocation.
Great. And I agree with Mr. O'Neill that, we need to have some future meetings to continue the dialogue and make sure we keep things moving along.
It's always been my understanding that the developer, before you start anything, will, obviously the site's cleared, but you will seed the entire site so that if you were to stop construction at any stage, we would still have essentially a park of the entire development, which I assume would just include the area that's going to be the park area.
Yes, that was what we said, and that's what we are, yes, we have agreed to that.
They've agreed, that's gonna be done.
And one of those, that was the reason that we had insisted on a phasing of the project.
Yeah, we're not going to have a site that is all, dust and without any soil erosion controls while we develop only a small portion of it. It'll either be developed or it will be seeded and green.
Good, green is good.
It'll be green.
Anything else?
You don't appreciate Hartsville.
Well, I appreciate, Carol.
Just one question, talking about contingency, the park will be built. What about if there's not full build-out of all the units, especially for the town park that appears to be last? What is going to remain then? Is it just going to be grass?
If you're talking about the park,
No, not the park.
oh, then, yeah, it's seeded. Yeah, it'll be grass.
It'll be grass.
It'll be grass.
Maintenance, properly maintained, I mean, how, or will that be?
Yes, yes,
Landscaped at all?
for sure.
More so?
Yeah.
That'll be built into the deal, maintenance and so on, I assume, right?
Yeah, it's my understanding that as part of the site stabilization, at the termination of the cleanup, they're going to seed it. Got to get out there and mow it occasionally. But aside from that, that's what we will have until such time as they actually construct on it.
So if it's not mowed regularly, it's going to end up as a field, and with the litter and everything else normally.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes to that, we'll, the town has a property maintenance code, we'll start issuing tickets.
Neil, I have a question.
Yes.
As you know, I think Tom spoke before, we in the city have been working on this project for over a couple of years. And it even started earlier in 2008, but the past couple of years, we've been really working on it. And my question is, how do you think you're going to go with it? Is it going to be a long-term thing, or can you go through it quickly? Because we've done so much of the project. I mean, the building we did, and the park and the land and everything. Is there any way that you can speed up your approvals so that the project can get going?
Yeah, well, we are processing the application with the speed that we process any application, which I think is, we don't waste time on it. Given the fact that we only got the application, a complete application in February, I think where we find ourselves, given the comments that we've returned back to the applicant, I think we've done that in a timely fashion. I also want to point out that it's not as if over the past 4 or 5 years when this project first came into the city that it was only the city participating in the environmental review. The town was providing comment on the DEIS and on various aspects of the project all through that. You didn't see us because this was all done at the staff level. So we've been an active participant basically from day one. So I just want to point that out. But given that we only received an application for the site plan approval from the town, and which now allows us to actually process the application just a few months ago, I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of moving this thing along. And again, we don't waste time. There's no reason to. So.
We're trying to work as expeditiously as possible in concert with the city to make, help make this a reality. We're done talking. I think we're all trying to be done talking and get something going, right?
Absolutely. Tonight was very, very helpful, and I'm not suggesting that this meeting wrap up at this time, but I want to, on behalf of the city's planning board and the city, I want to thank all of you in the town for your hospitality, for your willingness to do this, to have this meeting. For me personally, and I believe for the members of my board, it's been extremely helpful. It is a much-needed process to continue to move this along.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it, and I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say what Mr. O'Neill, the other O'Neill, from my perspective, just said, just beat me to the punch. Actually, I was very appreciative that you people hosted this and that the city planning board partakes. And the fact that you served food shows me that you're actually considering us in a very positive fashion. So, so we do appreciate the hospitality. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I made sure that we used a local deli from the city of Poughkeepsie, being Rossi's. That seems to be everybody's favorite, so that worked out very well. We collaborated on that.
Personally, I'd really like to see this happen more often, to coordinate between the city and the town over the years. I've tried when I was chairman a long time ago to do that, and we had, I think, one or two, and that was it. We couldn't get together at that.
Especially on projects of this importance
Yes.
and magnitude, it's almost a must.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, we pulled this meeting together actually pretty quickly. I mean, it was probably, 2 weeks ago we met. What I would suggest is maybe we find and set a date for the next meeting, set it far enough out to be able to, obviously, we have 3 of your 7 members here that we can, maybe find a date that would allow the rest of your membership or more of your members to certainly to attend, but make sure that we can also, accommodate our town board members as well. So what I'll do is I'll actually ask Carol Barone tomorrow, start circulating around for some dates, maybe a month or so out. And we'll find another. I personally like afternoons. I do a lot of night meetings. I like afternoon meetings, but if it's an evening meeting, that's fine. But we'll find a date and a time that would accommodate as many people as possible.
Yeah, we'll work with time. We'll work something out.
Yeah. Are there any issues that the town believes that we in the city, in particular the city planning board, should be looking at, should be addressing? And I especially address this to you, Neil, because as you said, you have been involved in this, in an intimate way for years. Is there something that we're missing? I'm not a planner. I don't do this type of law, every day. So I'm trying to reach out to everyone who does have a specific expertise in developments of this type in nature for assistance. So if there's any, and I don't care if it's criticism, just make it constructive, please. Any assistance, any direction, any issues that you think that, to your knowledge, we haven't addressed in a significant or appropriate way, I'd like to know. I'd like to hear about it.
Okay.
And either formally at this meeting, the next meeting, or informally with a phone call, a nastygram, an email, whatever. But it's just,
Well, why don't we, and I'm looking in particular at Joe and Liz, and I'll let them speak in a minute. There are issues that they've addressed or they're looking at that I think are germane to the city's portion of it. But also for the next meeting, we could probably, with a little more time, tee it up to be able to have sort of maybe a list of issues. We had a sort of a short list to talk about tonight, but maybe some more critical issues for the next meeting. But I'm going to turn it over to Joe Dennis, who's our consulting engineer.
Thank you.
Can I know a little bit of. Can I just interrupt that just for a second? We have a planning board meeting, a regular meeting with this project on the agenda on 20th?
The 20th.
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 And if you folks could provide us with your short list, long list, any list, at least 48 hours before, that would be extremely helpful, and I would respectfully ask that you do that.
We will do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can put that together with Neil. As far as the drainage and also in the spirit of cooperation among the city and the town, the city and the town engineers, as Andrew mentioned, have met with Andrew regarding the Kidney Creek, the culvert replacement, the overall drainage. We've had a couple of meetings. We met on site today. I think we are making progress when it comes to the drainage study and what to do with the creek. We still have a few more issues to get through, but we have made some progress from where we started. And to Marvin's point with the, increase of storms and storm surges and that type of thing, I know Andrew's looked at the floodplain and built in some freeboard on top of that, but when it comes to the storm surge, that should be something that's looked at. And perhaps we could look to like the State Emergency Management Office for guidance on, how to do that type of design work when you're that close to the river. So I'd like to have them check into that. And with the park being there, the Department of State, I think, would also be involved in reviewing the plans for the park. And then one other question when it comes to the park or the state land, and there was several old pilings and remnants of piers, if they could speak to what's going to be done with those items. So.
Right now, nothing is proposed to be done with those, the pilings, right now.
Okay.
Yeah. To be determined.
All right. Did your narrative mention they may be cut off at the base of the river or something, or it's still undetermined, I guess?
Yep.
I guess I'll have to repeat my appreciation at the end. I thought we had done that. But to your response about the pilings, before we completely eliminate the possible use of them, and we've already investigated cutting them off, at some point without disturbing the bed of the river, we want to see if there's any viability to using them, whether they can sustain that. Because, we could put some planks over it and use it to some form, but we're a little concerned about their sustainability, the life in them. So it may be one of that. We're looking at the best possible use or the elimination of. So that's the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Joe?
Now we'll just put our list together for
cool.
the city.
What, the other question? Yeah, actually a quick question. What is the date of the city planning board meeting in June? When do you meet in June?
Normally the third Tuesday.
Third Tuesday?
All right, so it's the same week as us. They're on Tuesday, we're on Thursday. I'm sorry, we're looking at dates here. Liz, you had another question?
Yeah, I know that in my written comments, I spoke about doing some kind of variety of shoreline armoring, and I know Andrew is just showing me, some of the other methods that will be incorporated. I guess the thing that I think should be given more consideration is that we're going to have a lot of new residents right here. And I understand there are some problems with pilings in the river, et cetera, et cetera. But people live near water. Sometimes they actually want to get down and touch it. And by that I mean, whether it's just a set of stairs or a pier or a lower deck or something so that people can actually maybe put their feet in the water. I understand there are all kinds of concerns with that, but I grew up on a lakefront. Pretty big piece of water, Lake Champlain. And yes, there are places on that shoreline where it drops off, where there's old stuff. But, either that or look up and down the shore and see where can people get to the water within a reasonable walking distance. But let's at least, I don't want us to give up on that idea quite yet. So.
The Vassar Boathouse. Take a swim.
Anybody? Well, I think we've pretty much exhausted the questions, and we're working on a date here, perhaps in the second week of June for a meeting. Yes.
I'm sorry, I just had one question. When you were showing, Mike, when you were showing the architecture on the townhouses, I don't know if it was intended to be access to the roof, or was it just an architectural feature? It looked like a railing of sorts on one.
Yeah. It's an architectural feature.
Okay, because I know that wasn't brought up before, and I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I think it was a great meeting. I think we got a lot accomplished, and
Absolutely.
we're going
Thank
to
you.
move
Thank
forward.
you
So
again.
thank you all for attending. I appreciate your a couple hours late in the afternoon, and we'll get together again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good comments.